welcome back. We hope you had a chance to stretch and absorb the rich insights from our earlier panels. That last discussion, moderated by Jan Withers, offers such dynamic views and introduced new ideas around collaboration in healthcare access. A heartfelt thank you to our panelists.
We want to express our gratitude once again to our sponsors for their continued support and dedication to this work. With that, we're excited to move into our next session, Design, Capital, Impact, the future of disability startups.
In this session, leaders in investment, design, and policy will talk about what happens when smart funding strategies come together with thoughtful design and inclusive approaches. We'll hear how mentorship, accelerator programs, and supported networks help new founders build strong foundations and scale disability-led startups, all while driving real impact and measurable results. Without further ado, please join us in welcoming our panelists for Design, Capital, Impact, the future of disability startups.
Hello, welcome to our next session, our panel here, Design, Capital, and Impact, the future of disability startups. My name is Chris Maher. I'm the founder and general partner at Samaritan Partners. And let me introduce my fellow panelists today. Going down the line from my left on your right next to me is Tomer Aharoni, the co-founder and CEO of Nagish. Next to him is Michael Bervell, who is the co-founder and CEO of TestParty. And down at the end is Diego Mariscal, who is the founder and CEO of Together International. Welcome, gentlemen. Before we get into our discussion, we're all going to provide a little bit deeper background and description of ourselves, so I will kick that off. As I said, my name is Chris Maher, founder and general partner of Samaritan Partners. I am a middle-aged white male. I'm about 6'2", with blonde hair that is quickly turning gray. And today I'm wearing a blue blazer and a white collar shirt with a little blue window pane pattern on it, dark jeans and loafers. Samaritan Partners is a public benefit venture capital fund, and we invest in the disability sector. So we invest in companies that are either providing products and services to the community and/or creating employment opportunities. And my connection to disability is that my wife and I have raised two beautiful daughters, both of whom live with disabilities. My oldest daughter has a physical disability, and my youngest daughter has intellectual and developmental disabilities. And let me pass it off to Tomer.
Thank you, Chris. Hi, everyone. I'm Tomer. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Nagish, which means accessible in Hebrew. What we do is we make communication more accessible for people with hearing loss, people who are deaf, and people with speech disabilities. Nagish received 2 FCC certifications in the last 2 years and has raised more than $60 million to date. And I'm happy to be here today.
Terrific. Thank you, Tomer. Michael?
Awesome. Hey, I'm Michael Bervell. I'm the co-founder and CEO of TestParty. TestParty is an automated digital accessibility platform. So we scan the source code of websites, and we use AI to rewrite the source code to be accessible as by the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. I'm a black male in my 20s, super handsome, really funny, extremely smart. Yeah, all the descriptions. I'm wearing a white button-up with a navy blue jacket, and I'm excited to be here, excited to talk about capital and impact.
Terrific. Thank you. Diego?
Start by saying that was probably my favorite description. I'm going to steal that. My name is Diego Mariscal. I'm the founder and CEO of Together International, which is the largest accelerator for founders with disabilities. We've supported over 700 founders all across the world and helped them raise more than $84 million in various forms of capital. I'm excited to be here. I think this is a very important conversation. And as for my visual description, I'm not sure if it's going to be as great as yours, but I am a 30-something-year-old male, Latin, wearing my signature red shoes. And normally I'm wearing a blue shirt, but I decided to dress up for the occasion. And so I'm wearing a white button-down shirt. So excited to be here. And my relationship with disability is I have cerebral palsy, and excited to talk about how that has turned into a competitive advantage in my life, but also for others as well.
Great. Terrific. Well, thank you, gentlemen. And that's where we're going to kick off. We're going to jump right into the deep end right off the bat here. And Diego, this first question is for you because I've seen you speak several times where you talk about disability as a competitive differentiator. Can you kick us off and elaborate on that?
Absolutely, yes. And and it's been kind of the cornerstone of our work, right? So when you think about it as disabled people, we have to figure out how do we get dressed, how we drive, how we communicate. And that is inherently entrepreneurial skills at play, right? It requires resiliency. It requires creativity. Just figuring out how I was going to get to the venue, right? Required a certain amount of additional thinking. As I mentioned, I have CP, and that means for me, I've literally fallen thousands of times in my life, and thousands of times I've had to get back up. And that has a ripple effect also in business, right? I don't know if 1,000, but 100 times I've made mistakes and, had roadblocks, and I've also had to get back up from a business perspective. And so a lot of our work really looks at how can we translate the disability experience and the lessons that disability inherently teaches you and translate them into a business context. Whether that is navigating benefits, right, and the complexity of what that means from navigating regulatory environments as a startup, or whether that is navigating a care team and communicating effectively and translating those skills into communicating effectively to your stakeholders and team members. So really the parallel experiences are very similar. And so a lot of our work has centered around how do we capitalize on that. Yeah. And so far, so good.
Yeah, no, your organization, which we'll get into more later, does an amazing job of that. With my two daughters, went through the same thing. My oldest daughter, who has a physical disability, was constantly falling as a child. And so things that I don't think people think about is people with disabilities are inherently really good problem solvers because you have to do that from day one. And you're resilient and you're adaptable. And so, Tomer, let's go to you. Anything you'd like to kind of dovetail on about that?
Yeah, I think it's true from the other side as well, that solutions for people with disabilities are actually, in many cases, great tools and better tools for people without disabilities. And we've seen this ripple effect so much in the past where people with disabilities invent something for their needs, or people that are close to people with disabilities invent something for disability needs. And that something becomes widely used anywhere by anyone, because what benefits people with disabilities will eventually benefit the greater good. And I think that ripple effect is so important and should not be underestimated.
Yeah. And so that kind of takes us down a path that Michael, you're going to be, this question is going to be directed to you to start, is where you start to get into the concepts of universal design and product market fit. And so can you speak to that as it relates to the founding and the growing of TestParty?
Yeah, I mean, I often say that innovation happens at the edges of the bell curves, right? That where there's the extremes is where you find the coolest, most innovative solutions. And when we think of what a business is, like fundamentally, it's you're solving a problem with a solution, and the pain of that gap, the gap between problem and solution, is what you charge. Like that's your revenue, that's your price, right? And so the bigger the problem, the bigger the solution, the more sought after that problem is, the more sought after a solution might be. And so I think to your point, Diego, like to have a problem first mindset for your whole life is what creates like this area where you can make the best solutions, right? Because everything you look around, you're like, well, I've made this solution, that solution, and I did it for free. Right. And now how do I monetize that? Right. And so it's like almost, I think it's totally is a superpower. At least in how TestParty was being created, the problem that we found actually came through my co-founder. And he was working at Amazon for Twitch, which is a live streaming platform, when Twitch got sued for not being accessible, right? And at that point, the common solution was, hey, if your company gets sued, go hire a consultant and they'll manually audit and give you a PDF. Then you look at the PDF and you solve it. And, us being 20-something-year-old guys who really, were TikTok natives, we're like zillennials, all the buzzwords. We're like, why are we looking at a PDF to go somehow solve accessibility issues, right, in a code base?
Yeah.
And so that's where we thought, like, there's all these security startups like SNCC and SonarQube and Acunetics that are doing this through automation, where you can look at a code base and automatically find security problems and fix security problems. And that's what we started to do. So when I think about product market fit, like the founding story of TestParty was really around what I would call like adjacencies, right? We looked at like security as a space and we said, what is the adjacency of a solution in another market like accessibility? And I was lucky that I had a background at Google and the UN in accessibility, so it was easy for me to see that. But that's where I think true product market fit and growth comes from, when you're trying to find a problem and find a solution to bridge that gap.
Yeah, I think it was great points. Diego, I'm going to let you kind of wrap up this topic, but like, can you speak to universal design and product market fit as it relates to lived experience?
Yeah, and I don't know if we've ever gotten into this, Chris, but when we started together, it wasn't about supporting founders. It was about changing the way people thought about disability, and we did workshops in schools. And that didn't work for a variety of reasons that I'm not going to get into. And then we focused on doing advocacy campaigns, and that also didn't work. And finally landed, after many, many years of trial and error, on supporting entrepreneurs with disabilities. And so when we talk about product market fit, I often use our own story as an example of, hey, it took several iterations and really several versions of what we wanted to see to become successful. But what was really interesting is that the problem never wavered, right? I started together with this idea of how do we redefine the way people thought about disability, right? I had the opportunity when I was a freshman in college, not too long ago, to go to the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And that was the first time ever I saw a group of leaders, disabled leaders, unapologetically proud of their disability. I grew up in Monterrey, Mexico, and I had never encountered people that were proud and loud about their disability. And so walking out of that conference, I thought, well, how do we create that experience for the masses? So that not only the elite that get to go to the UN have the opportunity to have that transformative experience. And so that was the impetus for Together. And it just so happened that we do it through supporting entrepreneurs. So I share this because our story is one of, hey, the problem was very clearly defined. The way in which we solved that problem, we've had to pivot and learn and shift. But the fact that the mission has never wavered, I think is also indicative of our success.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. You haven't told me that, so thank you. Cool. So for many companies and for many startups, sometimes you have to navigate the policy and regulatory landscape. And Tomer Nagish has been very good at that and very successful at that. Can you share some of the insights around that experience?
Of course. So I think that by design, regulation moves slower than innovation. Yep. There's really no way for regulation to keep up with innovation because innovation happens in closed rooms. You cannot know when a designer or an engineer or an entrepreneur builds something or thinks about something until it's out there and until it's actually being used. And it really doesn't matter so much until it's being widely adopted. The way we navigated this in Nagish is we said, okay, we want to create a better solution, a private phone call solution for people with hearing loss. And today, if you look at regulation doesn't regulate AI-powered services for communication. They only regulate human-powered services for regulation. So we had two options. One was starting to push back then we were just two students at Columbia University. We can be two students pushing for regulation. I don't think it will happen, and it will probably be very expensive. Or we can go the startup way. Raise money, don't think about regulation, put a product out there, build it with the community, get as many people as possible to use it, and then use the power of the community, show that there's a real need, show that people are actually going to benefit from using these products, and go to the regulators and tell them, listen, you're behind, let us help you, help us, help the community. And it worked pretty well for us.
Yeah, it certainly has. That's a really interesting approach. Michael, your experience, especially around the EU and Europe, is different because some new regulations have just rolled out. And so can you speak to how TestParty is navigating that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, when we were fundraising, the number one reason that people passed was because they thought the market was too small. Right. And if I had a list of like 200 people that we pitched, and I would write every time someone said no, what was the reason? And that was the reason about 70% of the time.
Yeah.
And so our story that we started to tell was, hey, there's this huge regulation coming out in Europe. It just came out on June 25th of this year, and it's the European Accessibility Act, with the argument that once it's required in Europe that websites are, compliant and accessible, that'll have a bleed over effect around the rest of the world, in the same way that GDPR, the Global Data Privacy Regulation, had a bleed over effect, where now we all see accept cookies on our websites, even if we're not doing business in Europe.
Yeah.
So I think what's interesting about like Tomer versus my story is like you were kind of pushing regulation to happen, right? Whereas we're kind of benefiting from regulation overall. And I think it is a scenario where like a rising tide lifts all boats, because today only 5% of websites are accessible if you look at their home pages. And so there's a 95% market, right? And right now all of the players are trying to push to get that 95% market activated.
Yeah.
So regulation is one great way to do that. And I think also there's other innovations that I can talk about later. That are also
it's both really powerful insights, but from a very different approach, which is great. Before we go on to the next topic, do you anything else you would say around policy and regulation?
Yeah, so, we're based in DC, so policy and regulation is a big topic for us. And I think I often go back to this idea of navigating a disability and the parallels between a business, right? So I have been a recipient of Medicaid services and Social Security and vocational rehabilitation services, all of which are government-funded programs, at least for now, for folks with disabilities, right? Figuring out how to access those programs and how to use them to your advantage. I mean, you require almost the equivalent of a PhD education. It's so complex and difficult. And so when it came time to, set up a business, set up a EIN number, that was easy compared to the nightmare that it is navigating all of those government programs and regulations. And so it goes back to the point earlier. If we are able to navigate the complexity that is disability advocacy, we are certainly able to navigate the complexity that is business. So that's one area. And then the other piece that I'll mention, and one of my favorite books is called Regulatory Hacking. And it talks about this concept that you can actually find ways to hack regulations and to figure out the kind of chain of command and who you need to talk to pull regulations in a certain way. So there is a concept in which you can use startup knowledge and experience to hack regulation. So thinking about that as a founder, and how do you use the challenge that can be regulation to your advantage to make your processes, your products more innovative, is an opportunity that's often overlooked.
Yeah. My youngest daughter turned 18 a little while ago, and we're navigating her now being an adult, and there is no playbook. And you're right, you need a PhD to navigate everything in SSI and SSDI and bank account limits, and that's like a whole nother panel. So let's shift gears a little bit. All of you have been very successful in not only starting your companies and organizations, but also scaling them and growing them. And part of that has been that you've all been very successful raising capital. And so I'd like each of you to take a minute or two to share about that experience. And let's start with Tomer, and then we'll work our way down. But just talk about that process, that experience, and any insights that you have. And you in particular have been incredibly successful raising capital for your business. So let's start with you.
Yeah, so I think for us, similar to Michael, we had the same issue when we started meeting with investors. We had no choice. Like, as I mentioned, like, our options were trying to figure out regulation as two students or raising money and putting the product out there to get a community to use it. So we had really no choice but to raise money. And once we decided to raise money, again, we had options. We could have tapped into grants, which you need probably 4 PhDs to figure out. Or we could have went the classic VC way, which we decided to do. And one of the struggles we had when we started is that when you go to hearing VCs or non-disabled VCs and you try to pitch them a solution for deaf individuals, they immediately think, I don't know any deaf person. It's probably a small market. So the first thing we needed to figure out is how do we really make a case for it? How do we explain to someone who's a complete ignorant in everything to do with accessibility that this is a massive market, and this market is going to benefit everyone. There are 40 million Americans with hearing loss to some extent. It doesn't have to be a binary condition. It's a really wide range of needs. So that was the first challenge that we needed to navigate. Once we navigated this, it became slightly easier because now you have a market, you can actually make a case for the market. And then we had to show that there is also a business model here. I do believe in capitalism when it comes to making a real change.
Yeah.
So if you want to actually impact people's life, yes, you can do it in a nonprofit where you can do it with grants. But if you really want to build something sustainable and make a long-term impact, you need a business model.
Yeah.
You need to make revenue. You need to grow. It's not a bad thing. Having a startup, raising money, being profitable, these are not bad as long as you're actually progressing change. And I think once we got into agreement with people, with investors, that this is what we're doing, that we're building a very sustainable business on one end, but on the other hand, we're actually doing well in the world. So we love saying doing good by doing well, or doing well by doing good. Things clicked and we were able to raise the money that we're raising.
No, I think it's a great point, and you guys are a great example. It's I love being in this space from an investor standpoint because all the entrepreneurs I meet, like all of you folks, probably had a lot of people telling you early on when you first found your company, oh, well, why, it's disability. Why not? Why isn't it a nonprofit? And I love the fact that you all are adamant about, no, we're going to build this in a for-profit way because we're going to create a self-sustaining financial model to support the social impact that we are going to scale and have a positive impact on millions of lives. So thank you for that, Tomer. Michael, give us your experience because you guys were also very successful in that first big round you raised.
Yeah, and we raised our round at a time when it was very difficult to fundraise.
Yeah.
Like people were not really investing in anything, let alone in our industry. And so I guess the biggest, there's 2 big takeaways. I think one is that fundraising starts before you, in theory, have a company, right? And so my first job out of college was working at Microsoft, where I then became an investor on behalf of Microsoft into companies like OpenAI, into companies like Kahoot. And so that was a really interesting experience to see the other side of the table. And there's a lot of inside baseball that I learned just by being, quote unquote, in the game. Yeah. Right. Now, I guess the way that you would access that is things like podcasts, right? There's so many podcasts I watch with Bill Gurley or, Paul Graham or any of the Y Combinator team that has all of the quote unquote secrets that used to only be understood if you had worked in the industry. And understanding that is really valuable because when you go to pitch an investor, and they say a comment like, yeah, I think the traction is not there, there's 100 things that could mean, right? And understanding that, what is in my data room, what is in that document I'm sending to them, and what are they seeing and not seeing is super valuable. So that's the first tip is there's all these resources online to learn about how investors think. And before you start pitching, you should definitely know how they think and what they're thinking about. I think the second thing that we did differently that actually really benefited us is we leaned on every angle that we could that we had as unique to us, right? And so at the time I was in business school. And so I leaned on that business school network really hard to the point where one of our lead investors came from a referral from a woman who I did 3 coffee chats with because she was a mentor at the Innovation Lab, right? And so who knew that 3 coffee chats over the spring and the summer and the fall will lead to an intro that led to almost a $2 million check by the winter. Right. And that wasn't intentional. It was just me trying to get to know people and understand people. And I leaned heavily on that network for sure. We also were super intentional at Fundraise about raising from VCs who invest in disability-focused startups, that invest in Black and Latinx founded startups, and just invest in social impact generally. And so when we built our cap table, that was part of the calculus. Right. And I don't think that's a negative. I think it's actually a pretty big positive. So those are the 2 things, get inside the investor's head before you pitch them, especially a specific investor, and lean on all of your strengths. Don't feel, bad about trying to lean on what's unique to you. It's what adds to the business and makes it more likely to succeed.
It's really interesting that you lean on that. And I know that, and Tomer, we're not going to get into it too much, but I know that you actually went in the opposite direction. You went away from social impact and disability VCs and went to traditional folks.
Right.
Because if you could prove it to them, you could prove it to anybody.
Pretty much. Yeah. We really wanted to avoid painting ourselves as like a disability company, even though that's what we are. We knew that we're going to need a lot of money to make this a reality, to actually build something unbelievable, and that we have to tap beyond just the disability network. And I think it was also a bit of a personal challenge. Like eventually we leave this world. Like I know everyone in our industry. I spend so much time with everyone in our industry. It's preaching to the choir. Yeah. And I wanted to make sure that we get real people that invest in real startups, that we compete in the real world startups, in tech startups, the biggest companies out there, and not just in this closed.
And truth be told, there's not enough private capital
True.
In the VC space specifically for disability. There's a handful of us. We all know each other. You guys all know us.
Which we're trying to change.
Yeah, which we're trying to change. Exactly. Yeah. So, Diego, your organization is technically a nonprofit, but I know you run it like a for-profit. Yeah. But you've also raised a significant amount of capital over the years to support your mission and your business. And so can you speak, and it's been through different channels. And so can you speak to that?
Yeah. So it's been a road. For sure. I think people see us now and I think they see a lot of success and yes, we are very successful. It's been a 10-year journey, right? 10-year overnight success. I think it's still up. You can find it, I think, on Facebook. But, when we first closed our first round, it was a crowdfunding campaign. And what I did was I would use Uber pools, and I would, go to nowhere. I would just pick random places in the city. And because Uber Pool, you used to pick up people along the way. So I would pick up strangers and pitch them while we were doing it.
That's great.
And so, that's how we raised our first $7,000. And you can see my face on that video, like crying because I was so excited.
And probably the first Uber pool rider to actually want more people to come.
Right. And I also used a lot of like social, like SSI, SSD, to supplement. So finding creative ways to fundraise. But I think what's unique about our story, and I encourage all the founders that we work to do this, is people think it's a chicken and the egg. You either need to have a product to raise money or a service, or you need the money to develop the whatever you're doing. I actually think it's in parallel, right? One of the things that we have been very successful at, and in fact, we're right now raising about a $40 million round, and we have 20 of that already committed, which is so exciting.
Amazing.
But our success has come from always doing both. So we've always run programs, even that $7,000 was to support like 5 entrepreneurs who were also doing crowdfunding campaigns, right? And so being able to show to those people, hey, this is what we did with the funding, right? And that led to Meetup, and then that led to Google seeing our work and led to more funding. And that has
a lot of which is coming from corporates and large financial institutions.
Exactly.
They want to support.
Exactly. But the secret to our success has always been, it's never been, oh, we need money to do this program. It's we're doing this program. It's having impact, continue to fund it and continue to scale it. And I think that's frankly the reason why we've been so successful, because we have results, constant results to show for.
Yeah.
So that's what I would encourage people to think about.
Thank you.
And I'll just add to that too. I often hear too much capital chasing not enough good ideas. Right. And once you have the results, the capital comes.
Right.
Yeah. So we're getting close to our time. So before we wrap up with some final thoughts, there's one last question that came up when we were prepping, and you're each going to get like maybe 60 to 90 seconds. Okay. So you got to keep it super concise. While we were prepping, all of you talked about how important in the early stages of your business, and even today as you're starting now to scale and grow more rapidly, how important finding mentors and advisors were, and also how valuable it was to participate in accelerator programs in those early stages as you were building your business. And so, Diego, let's start with you and we'll come this way. You run an accelerator. And so talk a little bit about that in terms of what you're doing with those companies, and then we'll kind of come down the line here.
Yeah. So, I mean,
60 seconds.
Part of the reason why Together, I think, is so successful is because there wasn't an accelerator for founders with disabilities, right? And so I'm creating something I wish I had when I was starting. So that's on the accelerator part. And then on the mentoring side, I actually have kind of a unconventional thought on this, which is one of my biggest mentors early on was Judith Heumann, who I think about every day. But we had a really interesting relationship in that she saw me as a mentor as much as I saw her, meaning that she would learn from me about technology and like how to use your phone, how to use FaceTime, and I would learn about all the knowledge. So approaching relationships as from a symbiotic standpoint, you as a young person, as an entrepreneur, have as much to offer this mentor as they have to you. And thinking about it that way, I think allows you to build more genuine connections.
That's a great point. And I'm going to actually jump over Michael and come to Tomer, because you actually talked about your experience with people mentoring and advising you has now turned you into giving back as a mentor and advisor. So can you speak to that?
100%. Yeah. So when we started the company, well, we didn't start it as a company. We had no intention to start a company. One of the things that happened relatively quickly is that Comcast reached out and they said they wanted to invest and invite us to work as part of their accelerator in combination with Techstars. Now, those who are not familiar with Techstars, I think it's the second largest accelerator in the US by market cap after Y Combinator. And their saying is constantly give first. It's highly based on mentors. They have this 2-week period when you just start. They call it Mentor Madness, where you have 80 meetings in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And they basically suit you up with the best mentors that can help you. And through those 2 weeks, we unlocked so much. We learned so much. We really accelerated the business in 2 weeks, like we could have done in 2 years without those people, which made us do exactly the same thing. The first thing I did after leaving Techstars is coming back to Techstars as a mentor. Nice. So I came back the next cohort and the next one, and I've been working with founders since then to help them with my learnings, because the pains that we're feeling now, someone felt them a year ago, and the pains that someone is feeling now, we felt them a year ago. So definitely makes a difference.
It's a difficult journey. It is. That's great. That's awesome. Michael, tell us about your experience.
Yeah, I mean,
You got 70 seconds.
I have a fun story. I mean, it involves you, Chris.
Okay.
I think
then you have 80 seconds.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. Chris, and how great you are. 90 seconds. No, but when we first started fundraising, I didn't know really much about the disability space. And you were someone who was willing to open up your network to even describe and be on the call with us for like an hour and introduce us to other investors. And it starts small. And I think what we do with mentorship, and I still do this all the time, even today, is I oftentimes will look, where do I want to be in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 3 years? And I have mentors who are in that position today, who are where I want to be eventually. Like, I know we're going to raise an A in 12 to 18 months. So now I'm currently and constantly talking to founders who have raised their A within the last month or 2 months, right? Just understanding what the process is and what I can learn. So there is a sense of immediacy to mentorship and a sense of strategy to it. But that's one of the biggest things. And so, I'm trying to be like you at some point in my life. So thank you for being a mentor.
Thank you. I'll give you that $20 later.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. No, it's a great example. And, all right. So as we wrap up here, and thank you again for the discussion today. We could go on for a very long time, but, I think I speak for all of us when I say that we're all very bullish on the future of disability inclusion and accessibility and the direction that is headed and it is going. And so as we leave our audience, can each of you share one final thought on why you're feeling so optimistic about the future? And we'll start all the way down at the end with you, Diego.
Why am I feeling so optimistic about the future? I mean, because we have to be, right? Like, is there another, people say that I'm an eternal optimist, but I'm like, well, is there another way to be? I mean, I think everything that's happening right now with the world is an opportunity to innovate. It's an opportunity to reframe disability as a competitive advantage, right? We've long talked about disability from the civil rights perspective, from this equal access, and that obviously has a time and a place, and it's critical information. But often, the conversation around innovation is missing.
Yep.
And I think this moment in time is particularly important, and there is an opportunity to highlight the innovation and the opportunity that comes with the disability market.
Yep. Agreed. Well said. Michael.
I mean, Diego said it all. I think the one thing that I'm really excited about is just technology. Like the fact that artificial intelligence allows you to do more with less data sets, I think is going to be a massive unlock for people who are typically not seen in those data sets. So I'll leave it there. I guess ping me on LinkedIn if you want to hear more.
Thank you. Tomer?
Yeah, I'm doubling down on that. The tech is out there.
Yeah.
Today you can literally describe what you want, and an AI will build it for you. And it's just the best time ever to build, and to build for more people and represent more people. And I'm really excited about it.
Agreed. The way that I guess I would kind of sum it up would be that, and all of you touched on it, I don't think there's ever been a moment in history when where we have an opportunity, if we work together, to create a world for all of us instead of some of us. And so that's super exciting. Gentlemen, thank you for your time today. Everybody, thank you for watching. We hope you enjoy the rest of the summit, and we'll see you soon.